What makes a character great? Well, a good start is if his name is Bellamy. Easily one of the greatest characters in One Piece who takes you across the full emotional spectrum. I have pretty much felt every emotion there is to feel with Bellamy, from anger to schadenfreude, to sympathy to respect, and finally, to really wanting to cheer him on and see Bellamy succeed. Bellamy is one of those side characters that has legitimately received more development than any of the Straw Hats. And if you're not a Bellamy fan already, then you better get ready, because no matter what season it currently is, after this video, you're going to wish it was spring. Bellamy doesn't have your typical One Piece backstory. He comes from a town called Notice in North Blue, which according to the One Piece wiki looks something like this. And I always point this out, but North Blue is where all of the wealth resides. It's a very old money kind of sea. And Treble even states that Bellamy came from an incredibly rich town, indicating that Bellamy was born into a life of privilege and was pretty much set up for life as soon as he was evicted from the womb. However, Bellamy chose to throw all of that away and become a filthy pirate. And he did this because, and I quote, "It was boring." So Bellamy then sought out Doflamingo, who Bellamy referred to as the pride of North Blue. So yeah, shots fired there, German, not so prideful about you. And as a side note, it's fascinating that Doflamingo's father Homing chose to live with the common people, but like not too common. He chose the richest possible place to live that wasn't Marijois. It's like a billionaire downgrading to mere upper class. But this brings up a very subtle connection. The relationship that would develop between Bellamy and Doflamingo can best be described as abusive. And that's because Doflamingo despises Bellamy for doing exactly what his father did. Bellamy actively threw away his wealth and power to live this lifestyle that Doflamingo was forced to live. So Bellamy is a constant reminder of Doflamingo's father. And I think that all of the abuse that gets hurled his way is Doflamingo's personal form of some kind of third-party revenge. Here's the thing though, from what we can tell at this stage, Bellamy wasn't a bad guy. He was just a kid trying to escape a boring life, but he also had a strong realist attitude, not believing at all in the power of dreams, and in fact his pitch to join Doflamingo was, "We want to be a legit pirate crew just like you guys. We ain't like those other pirates with dreams in their heads." And so from here on out, Bellamy got caught in the cult of personality that is Doflamingo. Also, this video is sponsored by Raycon. Wireless earbuds are very important to me because I simply do not function without music. Walking, cleaning, writing, and all sorts of other assorted activities, I do not function without these. And that's why Raycon is on a mission to provide essential and excellent earbuds that don't cost an arm and a leg. Legitimately half the cost for the same, if not better quality. And you know what? I reckon you could even get a spare pair and still almost certainly be paying half the cost of bigger named brands. What I love about these earbuds is that they're water and sweat resistant, so great for exercising, as well as compact with noise isolation, and have a battery life of 8 hours playtime for the everyday earbuds. Plus they're very comfortable. Like, snug. Like, solid and rigid, but not invasive. Like, I have no fear that they're gonna fall out, and they don't annoy my ears, and they play the music that it is that I want to hear, and so they're perfect. They're perfect. And Raycon has over 50,000 5-star reviews online, giving us a grand total of at least 100,000 very satisfied ears. Just click the link in the description, or go to buyraycon.com/groundline to get 15% off your purchase. So go do that thing, but for now it's back to you, me. Bellamy idolized this flamboyant flamingoman to the point of becoming something of a religious acolyte. The words of Doflamingo were the words of God, and the core tenet was that only the strong deserve to be heard, and that the weak don't get to choose how they die. The latter of which is surprisingly a belief that Trafalgar Law even adopted, despite his very strong anti-flamingo sentiments. But with this in mind, Bellamy began spreading the good word of Doflamingo, spreading it all over people's faces with his fists. Because like all cults, Doflamingo had an endgame in mind, which was the New Age, where only the strong were allowed to enter. So Bellamy's job became to recruit the strong and to purge the weak. And that's how he became the man that we first encountered in Jaya. At this point, Bellamy had been a practicing Doflamingarian for roughly a decade, and his role on Jaya is a masterclass of writing. Bellamy is like a pristine stepping stone. He's not a big character, but he is the most essential cog in the center that makes all of the bigger cogs function, because he had 4 tasks to accomplish on Jaya. 1, he needed to serve as a modern-day tie-in to the Nolan story. Bellamy is the encapsulation of disbelief. 2, Bellamy exists to show Luffy's progress, because his incident at the bar is a direct callback to Shanks and Higuma in chapter 1 of the series. Purpose number the 3rd is that Bellamy is a very loud red herring to mask the true lurking evil that is Blackbeard. And finally, Bellamy is our transition into the much grander villain that is Doflamingo. For such a minor character, Bellamy is such an integral element for One Piece to function. And ironically, for Bellamy to achieve his narrative purpose, it would require a catastrophic degree of in-world failure. Retrospectively, Bellamy is like a twisted antithesis of Joy Boy. He adopts the visage of Joy Boy, you know, the smile and the laughter, that's not how he laughs, but I did it. However, it's put to a very sinister purpose, designed to crush crush dreams rather than fulfill them. Bellamy's existence is to prevent the dawn of the world, hence why our final conflict with him occurs during the dead of night. And Oda pulls this off so well. He's really good at creating characters that are the epitome of despicable. And just to show how much of a piece of shit he is, Bellamy is introduced in chapter 222, so that's a big pile of number 2s there. And immediately he is shown to be abhorrent even by pirate standards. His first scene is losing a card game against Roshio, after which point Bellamy stabs Roshio in the hand and accuses him of cheating. Now look, Bellamy knows that Roshio didn't cheat, but the thing is, the actual rules of the card game do not matter. Because according to our Lord and Savior Flamingoman, the strong get to make all the decisions and the weak don't get to choose how they die. And that was true of Roshio, who was killed right then and there. One of the very rare characters who has actually died on screen in the present timeline of One Piece. But Bellamy had no concept of, I guess, what we would call honor among thieves. He cares about power and nothing else. And his official introduction is a panel I absolutely love, because as rarely as he utilizes it, Oda is a master of playing with light and shadow to create some really cool and ominous imagery. He's designed to look like a seriously intimidating kind of dude guy. However, Oda also undermines this by adding Bellamy's bounty of 50 million berries, which is half the amount that Luffy had at the time. And as much as I agree that bounties aren't power scaling, this is definitely designed to let us know that Bellamy isn't a real threat. He has the appearance of a threat, but underneath it all, there's nothing to back it up. Very much like how we knew that Higama was not a threat to Shanks. It was Shanks' choice to settle that dispute without fighting, just as it will become Luffy's choice to do the same with Bellamy, because Bellamy just isn't worth it. Yes, he physically assaulted Luffy and verbally insulted Luffy's ambitions of going to Skypiea, as well as finding the One Piece, thus kind of insulting the readers as well, because that's the very premise of the story. But so what? Luffy doesn't fight people just because they call him bad names. Luffy fights on behalf of others, usually after they've done something nice, like say give him a lunchbox. And that line is crossed when Bellamy beats up Mont Blanc Cricket and steals his gold, because there comes a time where even a fly is problematic enough to need swatting. And that is exactly what I would describe as what happened to Bellamy. Luffy wanders into town and one-shots Bellamy in one of the most satisfying singular punches ever displayed in any medium. And the physical defeat isn't even the worst part, because this sends Bellamy into a mental crisis. His life philosophy is all about respecting the strong and disregarding dreams. So how does he cope meeting someone an order of magnitude stronger than him who also has a dream? And it only gets worse for Bellamy from here. This is actually one of those times where the anime added a lot, because in episode 720, we see that Bellamy saw Luffy's shadow in the sky after defeating Enel. So not only was Luffy stronger, but he proved that Skypiea existed. And thus Bellamy's entire belief structure was shattered, just like his jaw. Because it's one thing to be beaten by a strong idiot, but it's another thing entirely for said strong idiot to then go and prove that a dream was real. And this is where the seed of true respect for Luffy was planted. And Bellamy, much to his credit, then decided to take in this new information and go to Skypiea to confirm it. I think a lot of people would just find a way to dissociate from the new information, double down and convince themselves that they were still somehow right. But this here shows that Bellamy is open to change. It's going to be a very long and extraordinarily painful journey for him, but there is still a tiny sliver of hope. Hope that one of the most disgusting villainous pile of number 2s can change. It's a small chance, but it shows that Bellamy is far from irredeemable. And what this does is begin an ideological conflict between flamingo philosophy and monkey philosophy. At this point, and I suppose most points, Bellamy is still dedicated to Doflamingo. He falls back on his cult leader and doubles down towards Doflamingo's ambitions. There's even some great symbolism for this post-time skip, where Bellamy's chest is literally branded with the symbol of the Don Quixote pirates. But what you can't see in this image is that within Bellamy, his heart is ever so slowly being won over by Luffy. And so we land on one of my favorite Dressrosa chapters, 706, which firstly introduces Bartolomeus, that sounds pretty great, but it also gives us our first Luffy-Bellamy interaction post-time skip. And it's very poetic because Luffy is disguised as Lucy, but Bellamy recognizes him instantly. Bellamy sees Luffy for exactly who he is, and he sees him so clearly. Whereas on Jaya, Bellamy was blind. He completely misjudged Luffy and couldn't see anything. So this is a huge moment of growth. And then there's the iconic Bellamy line, "I won't laugh at you anymore," which is a very big thing coming from a character known as the Hyena. It's also a great moment for Luffy because it shows his emotional maturity and judge of character. Because Luffy very quickly discovers that Bellamy has changed and now fits more into the friend basket than the enemy trash can. But what does Bellamy do here? Because this is an inner crisis taking place in physical form. Luffy is here to beat Doflamingo. Both cores of Bellamy's conflicting ideologies are tearing each other apart in reality as well as within him. And this is one of those super deep character moments, as Bellamy is even ordered by Doflamingo to kill Luffy. So essentially one part of his mind trying to get rid of the other part. And it's also fascinating fascinating because this literal conflict between Luffy and Doflamingo is a direct reflection of Bellamy's mental conflict. It's almost the classic angel and devil on your shoulders giving you conflicting advice. The Doflamingo angel saying, "No matter where you go, Bellamy, you'll never be anything more than a thug," a very wide thug. How did you get so wide post-timeskip? My god. Meanwhile, the Luffy devil is countering with, "Mate, what are you talking about? Bellamy did change. He's done the changing already. You're a good boy, Bellamy. Don't listen to the weird pink thing," which ideologically paralyzes Bellamy. He doesn't know what to do. Under Doflamingo's ideals, the weak don't get to choose, and Bellamy is the weak. That will never change. And yet Luffy is continuously proving that dreams exist and that change is possible, which all leads to Bellamy.exe crashing and adopting the Nico Robin solution of just wanting to die. And in order to enact this, Bellamy uses a technique that he is certain will lose against Luffy. He knows it's a suicidal maneuver and gives a very touching set of what I suppose are last words. "I understand that I chose the wrong man to idolize and how pitiful that makes me, but if I'm going to be an idiot, I've got to see that choice through to the end. This is what I want, to have the end be at the hands of the only other man I've ever respected." And so Bellamy got thwacked in the face a second time in the exact same way, which is such a powerful event. The first time this punch played out was immensely satisfying. Seeing this absolute cockwaffle finally get what was coming to him was like, oh, so good. So, you know, the good noises. I don't know what noise you make for good things, but those are mine. And yet when we see the exact same event again, I have the completely opposite reaction. I feel really sad for Bellamy because now he's changed, and at heart, I know he's not a bad guy. And I think it's just wild that the exact same event can elicit two completely different emotional responses. It's genuinely brilliant. And it even goes a layer deeper into wankery, because remember that their symbol on Bellamy's chest? Well, that represents his body being puppeteered and owned by Doflamingo. Even when Doflamingo isn't physically controlling him, Bellamy is still moving to his will. However, his heart and mind belong to Luffy. Speaking of, Luffy, of course, does not grant Bellamy's death wish. Instead, he does a very sun god thing to do and frees Bellamy from his flamingo prison, both metaphorically and literally. In fact, double literally, freeing him from the puppet strings, but also freeing him from the birdcage. And that leaves Bellamy with something he's never really had in his adult life, a choice. And I remember back in the day, some people were confused and a bit disappointed when Bellamy didn't officially join the Grand Fleet. But that decision makes far too much sense. Bellamy spent his entire life in the service of his idol. So, you know, the one thing he isn't going to do now is instantly pledge his service to another idol. If anything, it was a very Luffy thing to do. Bellamy prioritized his own personal freedom whilst also holding great respect for someone else. And when it comes down to it, Bellamy was a victim of this world. Someone who fell prey to a world noble and was used for his entertainment and I guess as an outlet for rage against his deceased father. And just at the point of prime despair, in comes the sun god to rescue Bellamy and offer him freedom. I said this with Helmeppo as well, but Bellamy is a metaphor for what's going to happen to the entire world. Control will be stripped from the world government and Luffy will end up giving everyone freedom. Bellamy is just one of many living case studies for this, a very powerful one as well. Because if Luffy can change one of the most sickening villains in the series, then he can absolutely change the entire world. And in the meantime, Bellamy is now living his life on his own terms, retiring from piracy and pursuing a brand new career, using his newly acquired skills to show respect to his newly acquired idol.